Good morning and good Shabbos once again. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein, joined this morning, as always, by my friend and teacher, Rabbi Hillel Silverman. Good morning, Hillel. How are you?
Good morning, Rabbi. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's lovely to share this moment with you. This morning, we're reading Parshat Shoftim. And as well, we're beginning the month of Elul. We began on Thursday and Friday this week to begin to prepare for the high holiday. So talk to us this morning about Shoftim v'Shotrim.
Yes, that's right. Thursday and Friday was the month of Elul. And Elul is a very special month. We recite a certain psalm every day, and we prepare ourselves for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We prepare ourselves both physically and spiritually. This will be the first time that we're not gathering together in our synagogues and our homes. As you mentioned to me, the last time this happened was in the desert, in the wilderness with Moses. But now we'll be gathering in our homes. It'll be a challenge. I know we'll meet the challenge. I know we'll do our very, very best. And one thing is certain, we'll never forget. On to the Torah reading for this morning. It's Shoftim. It's a very, very interesting Sedra in the book of Leviticus. We're going to learn some of the ethical and moral imperatives of the Jewish religion. And it's these moral and ethical imperatives that make our religion so meaningful. Now, we read tomorrow about righteousness. Tzedek, Tirdov. Thou shalt surely pursue righteousness. What is righteousness? Tzedakah, righteousness, tzedek. It's doing the right thing. The righteous, being kind, being honorable, being protective, being loving your neighbor as yourself. All of this makes one to be righteous. Tzedek. Twice it says, pursue righteousness. A rabbi asks the question, why 2 times? And obviously they answer, it's for emphasis. You emphasize it. It is so important to be righteous. You recite it twice. The Bible says tomorrow, Tirdof, you shall pursue righteousness. Not to be righteous, but to really pursue it, to go after it. Simcha Dunam said, the reason it says twice is that the means must be righteous as the end is righteous. We try to do something for a righteous goal, but how to attain that goal is also very, very important. Tzedakah is the Hebrew word for charity. It comes from tzedek, righteousness. But it's not a favor. We're not feeding a dog a bone. We're not doing something for somebody else because we feel we're able to do it. It is doing it because it's the right thing to do. Let me give you an example of tzedek, of righteousness. We have an organization in our Jewish life called the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal. To me, this is one of the most worthwhile organizations in the world, the United Jewish Appeal. It provides for the survival of our Jewish people, the survival of our Jews from the concentration camps, the survival of the Jews in Europe, the survival of the Jews during Israel's conflicts, the War of 1948, the Six-Day War, 1967, the Yom Kippur War, 1973. It was the UJA which provided much of the equipment and the arms that they used. The UJA has made it possible for over 1 million Jews to immigrate from Russia to the Holy Land. It provided for the Jews of Ethiopia on 2 different missions to reach Israel. One of the most fulfilling assignments in my profession was when I became the national chairman of the UJA rabbinic cabinet. There were over 100 rabbis in this organization, Orthodox, conservative, and Reform leading rabbis in the community. And we would meet for the deliberations of the UJA in their magnificent work. As chairman of the rabbinic cabinet, I would attend the retreats in which the officers of the UJA met 3 times a year in Washington, in Miami, in New York. And what always impressed me was that every retreat, in addition to deliberations, there was a caucus. Now, what is a caucus? Caucus is when the members of the officers and directors of the UJA would caucus themselves as to their commitments, monetary commitments to the UJA. And I was always so overwhelmed by what I heard. As I was sitting there, they would get up one by one and would caucus. They would tell you how much they were going to pledge for the UJA. A man gets up, he says, $1 million. That's tremendous, overwhelming. And the next would get up and say $750,000. And so it went. You can say, well, these were very rich people. These were multi-millionaires, which is true. But they didn't have to give. In the light of Jewish tradition, tzedakah, righteousness, it was the thing for them to do. And that is how we managed to survive as a Jewish people for so many, many years. Tzedakah, tzedek. Tzedakah means to establish a righteous relationship between husband and wife, between parent and child, between employer and employee, between neighbor and friend, between nation and nation. Tzedek, tzedakah, the righteous thing to do. When we want to compliment a person, we don't say he's a great man because he's successful, he may be, because he's a leader, he may be, because he's honest, because he gives of himself. We call him a tzaddik, a righteous man. So this is a teaching of tomorrow morning. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, thou shalt surely pursue righteousness. We have another teaching this morning in the Torah, and that is lo tashchit, thou shalt not waste. And the Bible tomorrow morning tells us that when, as a member of the military, a member of soldiers go into a town, they are able, if they have to do it, to destroy human life, but you should not destroy the trees if they do not have to be destroyed. Ha'adam eish hasadeh is a person, a tree. You can kill people if you have to in war, but there's no need to take an enemy's trees and destroy them if the trees exist there. In our religion, trees gives us so much. Trees provide beauty. They provide shade. They provide fruit, soil erosion, Arbor Day. In our country, it goes back to this passage in the Bible tomorrow morning about not destroying wastelessly. The Jewish National Fund in Israel, the Keren Kayemet, is a very important organization that preserves trees. In the olden days, there was the blue box. Every Jewish family had a blue box on their dresser, on their desk, and they would put coins in it. And these coins went to Keren Kayemet, to Israel, to plant trees. You can go to Israel today, and they have ceremonies of planting trees. I remember the first time I was in 1938, and when I drove between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, there were no trees. But you drive now, and there are tens of thousands and millions of trees. This is the passage, the basis for not wasting. You should not waste. Trees are precious and should not be wasted. You remember that movie of Woody Allen's, Zelig? That's a line I'll never forget. Zelig was asked, "What were your father's last words?" And he said his last words were "save string." Imagine, save string. You don't waste even string that you find on packages. And we tend to save clothing, and we save shoes, and we save equipment. I remember when I was a young boy, I think I must have been 8 or 9, and my grandfather, Rav Shalom, was sitting at the table with us, and we were playing with bread, throwing bread at each other, my brothers and myself. And he was irate. He says, "Lo tashchit," you should not waste bread. I remember that I went to a friend's home, and I noticed that in one of his closets, he had bottles, empty bottles, maybe 50 empty bottles. He was saving all of the bottles. I don't know why he was saving. It's good to save, but we can exaggerate it. I know somebody who wants to sell his home after 26 years, but he's cleaning out his garage. He has accumulated so many things in the garage, it has taken him weeks to clean it out. We have to be careful of what we have and not waste, but we can over exaggerate the waste. Talmud tells us even our own property is sacred. Even our own property should not be wasted because our property is loaned to us from God. So that's a second reading that is told to us tomorrow. The third has to do with king, Melech. Melech. Our Bible tells us that the king is restricted. It's not a complete monarchy. If you have a king, you shall not have him increase his chariots of war and his soldiers. He must not have many women. He should not be collecting gold and silver. We read in the Torah tomorrow morning that your king, God says, should not be a nochri, meaning he should not be born in a foreign land, which is why the United States tradition is no foreigner can become a president. You remember when Obama was criticized for being born in another country. It was based on this text. I even hear a rumor or two that the vice president nominee Harris is accused of being born in another country, a nochri, which is ridiculous. The king also, the Bible says tomorrow morning, should take a scroll of the Torah with him. Wherever he goes, he should study that Torah and he should follow the teachings of the Torah. In other words, the Bible tells us tomorrow morning that the monarchy has limited power. At the same time in Mesopotamia and then later in Egypt, the kings were gods. They had complete authority. They couldn't be contradicted. But our concept of the monarchy is much more limited. There's a passage in the book of Judges, Vayimchu et Avimelech lemelech. These words mean, and they anointed Avimelech to be a king. And these were the people of Shechem, long before Saul became the first king of Israel. And I remember my professor was at the seminary 70 years ago. He was an elegant man. His name was Spiegel. And he was from Austria, dressed elegantly, and he had a German accent. And he quoted these words to show the derision that the children of Israel felt through having a king. And this is the way he read it in class. Vayamlichu et Avimelech lemelech. And you can hear in the assonance of the words melech that the Jew really didn't want a monarchy. Later in the Judges, and the period of Judges came after the children of Israel entered into the Holy Land for about 200 years. There was Gideon and Deborah and Samson and Yiftach, number of judges. And finally, Samuel was told by the people, "You are old. We would like a king like other nations." And he came to God, and God said to him, "Samuel, it's not you that they resent me. You can give them a king, but he should not be exploiting the people. He should limit his democracy. He should limit his army. He should not go to excess." And Saul was the first king of Israel, finally. And even his monarchy was strange that he was, there are three different versions of how he became king. Saul was appointed by Samuel. Saul was appointed by David, by God, and Saul was elected by the people. Next king was David. And after David, the king, there became a monarchy, a civil war in which the Jewish kingdom was split in two. And there was Judah, which was the southern kingdom, and there was Israel, which was the northern kingdom. And the northern kingdom never inherited one after the other. Every king was either assassinated or killed or deposed. And finally, the kingdom of Israel in the north ended in 721. And the Jewish kingdom, monarchy in the south, in Judah, did last. It went in every generation. It went to the same family. But then in 586, the monarchy came to an end when the Jew was expelled. And since 2,500 years ago, there has been no king, no monarchy in Israel. Of course, the Jews never had their own land until 1948. But in 1948, when they became a country, there was no agitation to have a monarchy, but rather a free election in a democracy. Of course, with Benjamin Netanyahu, some people say that he is a monarch, but he isn't. They've had 4 elections. Now, why did the Jew look with derision upon the monarchy? Because they had a king, and the king was Melech, the king was God. God was a king. Melech Malchei HaMelachim. God was the King of Kings. On Rosh Hashanah, we have the Malchuyot celebrating the kingship of God. Human beings cannot rule and be absolute over individuals. So these are 3 interesting teachings from tomorrow morning's Sedra, of tzedakah, of charity, of not wasting, and of monarchy, of a king. Next Saturday, we will have some additional interesting ethical and moral teachings. Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos, Hillel. Take good care, and thank you for sharing your Torah with us this morning. And be gesund, and Shana Tova to you and your family.
To you, and thank you very much.